Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Author's Best Friend podcast. My name is Lauren, and I'm here today with my new bestie, Mollie Goins.
Hi.
And Mollie, what are you drinking?
I am drinking an Angry Orchard, the crisp Imperial. I really have been on an Angry Orchard kick.
Oh, yummy. I don't think I've seen the blue one before.
They have them only at the gas station by my house. I don't know how I got this lucky, but
I am drinking a Fruit Splash Canada Dry with just a dash of vodka in that.
I'm a bit of a vodka girly myself. I love a good vodka drink.
Yeah, I think it's my go-to. I can stomach it the best. It's easier for me to measure where I'm at, like when going out, and it doesn't seem to hurt so much the next day. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mollie, for being here and for chatting with me. Just as a little intro to you, you're like a real life superhuman. So you're a wife, you're a mom to you got fur babies and human babies.
Yes.
And you're an indie author, and you're also a co-host of Sippin' Stories.
I am.
Bookish Q&A on Instagram. And you have two books out of your 5-book series released, with a third one on the way later this summer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Later this summer. Awesome. And so the first 2 books, you have Feel It All and Bring It All. And then the third book will be Despite It All. And this series focuses, at least for the first 3 books, focuses on these 3 sisters. I'm in the middle of Feel It All. I'm about 2/3 of the way there. I have this bad feeling in my gut that something is going to happen. Like something bad's going to happen. Like you put a cop in there, and it just feels like his job, something's got to pop off with his job. And you identify yourself as like an emotional author. And I just don't know how emotional you're planning on getting. So I'm at this stage where like we have a lot of like flowery, sweet scenes. And I feel like a shoe is going to drop.
Coming.
Yeah, I feel like it's coming. And I adore Graham. I will give you all my savings if we could get some character art of him in a uniform. That would be the greatest. As much as I love their love story, him and Winry's, the thing that's hitting the hardest for me in this book is the sister love. I don't have any sisters, and there's reading this relationship. They're just so sweet to each other. And so I wanted to just kind of start off talking a little bit about where that inspiration comes from. Like, I think you have a sister, right? Is a little bit drawing that from your relationship with her?
I do. It's actually so growing up, it was always just me, my mom, and my sister. And so one of the things that I love so much about this series is that each sister kind of takes inspiration from me, my mom, and my sister. You know, with the first one with Winry, look, even with her, you know, she struggles a lot with her mental health. And that was something that I am very passionate about and have struggled with forever growing up, and especially moving into motherhood. That was really amplified. And then my sister, it's got Waverly, has aspects of her, like her fiery personality and just some of the background. I can't give away spoilers and stuff like that. But, you know, she's got that spunk. And then the third one will be Wyla's story. And that will really kind of play off my mom and her story, especially with, I have, my assistant gave me strict instructions. She was like, you are not to tell any spoilers. I'm so bad about it. But when in the second book, when you read Bring It All, the main trope for book 3 is given in book 2.
Okay. Do we meet Jet in book 2?
Not officially, no.
Not officially, no. Okay.
No, you don't see him. His name is brought up, and then his connection is actually mentioned, not by name, but by a side character in the story. Okay. But she doesn't say him by name, and it's literally one line, and then it's just moved on.
Has anyone found this? Like, has anyone said anything to you like, oh, I figured it out?
I don't think so. Other than one of my author friends did. But as far as like readers, I know some readers know just from, I can't keep a secret. But because I'm like, do you want to know something? Because I'm so excited. But
Oh my gosh, that's so cute.
no one has, because I actually was messaging one today and she was like, where does he come from? And I was like, well, you could find, like, you can figure it out if you want
Mhm.
to read. And so I gave her like a chapter range. She was like, I'm going to go read them tonight. I'm like, okay.
Okay, I want to venture a guess, and I suppose you don't have to tell me if I'm right or wrong about the trope, but I was going to ask you about this, about like where your book titles are coming from. And so we have Feel It All with Winry and Graham, and this feels like I got the sense that it was maybe like neither of them had really loved like this before. It was a very emotional experience for them. They didn't know each other, and then they fall in love. With Bring It All, and because I know Waverly a little bit and I know Owen a little bit, I got the sense that it's a little enemies to lovers, sort of grumpy sunshine, or like some sort of conflict. And then with Despite It All, because of the title, it's making me think that this is like not a forbidden romance, but something is keeping them apart. Maybe one of them's already in a relationship, or it's like a second chance and they're coming back. This is my guess, just based off the titles that you've given us. So I don't know. We'll see. I'll find out if I'm right or wrong in the summertime.
It's funny how the titles really worked out, because I didn't think of the title Feel It All until I finished the book. I just didn't, nothing really clicked until I wrote it out, and which there is a title drop. So you'll be able to see it. Each book in the 5 series will have that title drop. And I just wrote the title drop in Despite It All, I think the other day. I like sent it to my little author group. Like I clicked the snippet and sent it to him. And I was like, title drop. I just wrote it. So each book will have the title drop. And I think it's funny how it kind of plays into like the whole, I feel like it relates back to the whole story itself. So when you read them, they make sense to me, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. This is 100% like the hindsight bias.
Yeah.
Just based now that I've read most of Feel It All, getting that sense. And you do introduce Waverly and Owen in the first book, so I already kind of know their personalities. So that's just my guess. But yeah, so how did you decide that you wanted to write this story of these sisters that are sort of a nod to you and your sister and your own mom, and like I think it takes place, you said, in South Carolina, like a fictional town in South Carolina. Is that right?
It does. So the town is actually inspired just a mixture of, I'm from a small country town. A lot of that kind of comes into play, especially, which you said you were halfway through. So I don't know if you've read where they go to like the carnival yet.
Yes. I read the carnival scene.
Like that's based off a carnival that we have in my town. It's actually where me and my husband met. So it's a very important aspect.
Cute.
And then the town of Aster Creek is actually based off a town where my husband and I went on our baby moon, as some people say, like right before our son was born, in Bluffton, South Carolina, which is just probably, this could be wrong, but it was really close to Savannah, Georgia. Like it's right on the border. I want to say it was like a 30-minute drive, because we did both. I know that's the general area, but the time from one place to the other could be wrong. But it was just such a beautiful town, and I loved it so much. And I had actually told my husband after we left, I said, if we were ever to move states, I would want to move to this town. This is where I would want to move. And he was like, well, maybe one day, you know. He's like, but we got kids. We need grandparents.
Yeah, he's like, how about you just settle for writing a book about it? We'll revisit that later. When you decided that you wanted to write this series, how did that happen?
So this is actually, and I have a tendency to trauma dump, but I think it's very important to talk about. I had actually had a really bad year. I would say it was 2 years before I'd actually wrote a word. I've kind of blacked a lot of it out, but it was after my son was born. I had really struggled a lot with my mental health and had a lot of suicidal thoughts and suicidal attempts. And it was very hard to come back from after, you know, we had just kind of pushed through, done lots of therapy, found the correct therapist and doctors to give me the correct medications. And I had my beautiful daughter who's amazing. And after that, I was like, you know what? I kind of feel good. She was a couple of months old, and I had felt like I was just in a really, really good place for myself in the growth that I had had. And my husband was like, well, you've talked about writing for years now. Like, we've been together. This year will be 11 years. And he was like, you've talked about it forever. Why don't you just try? Why don't you just give it a shot and see what you think? And I really, because I had always wrote in journals and just kind of wrote little snippets, nothing's, serious or that will ever see the light of day. But, I had wrote those, and he was like, just give it a shot. And I fell in love with it. And now we're here.
And was it cathartic to sort of knowing that you were maybe putting yourself a little bit in this character and taking it from like journals that no one's going to read to telling a story that might resonate with people?
Yes, it was very cathartic. And I love when people reach out and let me know that like the mental health aspect of Feel It All really they related to, because I do feel like it's a topic that not many people talk about. And whenever I had went through all of this, my therapist had told me, she said, it's only taboo because you're making it.
Mm-hmm.
Like not talking about it is what makes it taboo. So usually I have a tendency to just talk about it because it's something that was a part of me. But, I've been in a really good place and a very healthy since I have gotten kind of learned myself, I think, really, because that's the biggest thing is learning things that trigger me and my warning signs of like, oh, when I have a panic attack, when I feel it coming on, I've trained myself to be like, okay, you're about to have one. So let's really prepare ourselves. So I'll have like exercises to bring me out of those panic attacks. And so it just feels really well. I feel equipped to battle my brain.
And so when you decided that you were going to write the book, was it part of the healing process, or was it already like, I've conquered this, I know how to handle this, now I'm ready to tell the story?
I think a little bit of both, because there is a chapter in Feel It All where she does talk about, she has similar issues where she talks about how she had a suicide attempt. Our stories have similarities and differences at the same time. But I wrote that chapter, read it once, and I have not read it again.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to read it. I have no desire to read it. I've made my peace with it, but going back to read it, it's a little still raw for me. But it was at the same time, it was very healing to also get it out.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, was it pregnancy related? Like, did they think it had something to do with like fluctuations in hormones, or was it just happened to fall around the same time as your son being born?
I think a little bit of both. So I think it had really kind of kicked whenever I had my son, because postpartum depression is such a big trigger. But this is actually interesting, and not many people know this, but if you give someone depression medication with not knowing if they're actually depressed, it can make them suicidal. So I am actually bipolar 2, which is they call it soft bipolar, which has depression effects, which each bipolar has depression effects. But when I said this medication's not working, it's not helping me, I feel worse, my OB was just like, here's more depression medication, here's more depression medication.
Oh, wow.
So I finally went to another doctor, and I was like, I feel horrible. I was like, and my husband, sat me down, and he was like, we've got to figure something out. Like, I want you here. We had went to the doctor the next day. She referred me to an actual psychiatrist, and she got me in immediately. It was one meeting. We had one sit down hour, and she said, well, I can tell you why you're struggling. She said, you're bipolar. You don't have like depression. You do, but you're bipolar and you need different medication. And within the month of starting that medication, I had felt so much better. And she was like, you're also very ADHD. And you have no skills to cope with ADHD. So she's like, let's do all of these things. And just being on the right medication and knowing myself, like, okay, I'm in a manic phase. This is what I'm going to do to correct that self is so beneficial. I had actually stopped taking my medication. We had weaned off and I've been off of medication for several months now because I'm not recommending you taking off your medication. This was just what was best for me in my treatments. She was like, let's just try it. Let's just give it a go. And a lot also played into when I did have my daughter. They were like, we do kind of have to change it up a little bit. So that's where it kind of all came into play also. But yeah, so obviously I still struggle, but I've gotten so much healthier just from getting on the right medication to learn myself and identify those things and then learning what to do when those things happen. Has just been it's been so much better for me. Yeah. So this is trauma dumping. I like to just...
Hey, this is what best friends do. We get right into it.
I know. This is how I make all of my best friends.
Well, honestly, that's so wonderful that you share that. And I'm so glad that the birth of your daughter was such a positive experience. I'm sure you were feeling a little bit anxious about possibly some of those thoughts and things coming back up.
I was, for sure. I was definitely worried. And this was also kind of played into it too. She had nearly killed me.
Oh, no.
We will not get into the details, but I had to have emergency surgery after. And so I had also then almost died again.
Oh my gosh, Mollie.
I can laugh about it now. It's okay. I will hold this over her head for the rest of her life.
Yeah, she better be the nicest teenager.
She is going to be so mean. She's going to be so mean. She's already so mean to her brother. It's hysterical.
Oh, no.
So when that had all happened, it was, I always kind of gloss over that. I'm like, yeah, well, it's fine. It really was great in the moment, like healing to know that I have done all of those things and been through all of those things. And where I'm at now, it almost makes things feel more special.
Oh, for sure. You definitely appreciate them a lot more now, especially, your children after everything you've gone through to bring them into this world.
Bring them into this world. But we're also done, so we're good.
Yeah. Hey, you got a boy and a girl. You're good to go.
I'm good to go. Good to go.
So now, even with even more of this background, I'm so curious as to your decision to pair somebody with such like an emotional journey to get to the place that they are now with someone who's like becoming a police officer. It just feels like, I guess if I were to picture a police officer, it's just like you kind of have to be a hard ass. You got to get people to follow the rules and you can't let people push you around and whatever. And so it doesn't really seem that Graham is that way anyway, but what kind of brought about that idea to pair her with somebody like Graham?
My husband will listen back to this and he'll hold this over my head forever.
Oh my gosh, is he a cop?
He's not a cop. He worked in our local sheriff's department for years as a jailer. He wanted to be a cop and he was in the process, but then we got married and then we got pregnant with our son and then COVID hit and it was just like, he was like, I want to be with you guys. And it's a very demanding schedule when you do it. And so it was just a choice of his, but he loved it in the sense of, my husband is probably one of the toughest people I know, but he's very Graham in the sense of, he's also just one of the nicest people you will ever meet.
Oh,
just so genuinely kind. I try to base the cops because I know cops is a very sensitive topic. And both me and my husband acknowledge that there are a lot of problems in that system. And a lot of those issues, were factors as to why he left as well, because he did not agree with things that would take on throughout those, processes and standings. So those were always factors for him that he did not agree with. And so they played into him leaving. But I had talked to someone and they had asked this very similar question of why I would chose cops. And I said, I had told them this and I said, I can't ensure a safe world, but I can ensure a safe world in my book. So in my book, it's a safe space for those places and to feel comfortable in those moments. because she had said that she wasn't very comfortable with cops. And I said, that's perfectly fine. You do not have to read my book by any means. That is no pressure. I don't ever want you to read something you're uncomfortable with. And that's, it doesn't affect me personally. I will not judge you for not wanting to read it. That is perfectly understandable. So, but I can ensure that my cops are good cops.
I've talked about this before, but I'm a big proponent of just like jumping into books. I don't really read the synopsis or things on the back. And so when I started reading it, and you had mentioned that Graham had been at the academy and was joining, I thought that was, because it is such a controversial occupation these days. And I think to write what we all hope the ideal of a police officer is, which is somebody who could be there in the worst moments of your life and can help to de-escalate the situation and be there to help you and be there to make you feel protected and supported and those sorts of things.
Yes.
I think is really wonderful, because that's what the hope of what that would look like. And it doesn't look like that a lot of times, but I thought that was really great that you chose to do that.
Yes. And I agree. I am not going to deny that there is not serious problems, but in my world,
in Aster Creek, the police officers are doing their job.
They are doing their job. They are protecting you. And that's not to brush off that the topics aren't important. But I know for me, especially when I read to escape. I read to escape, to see these beautiful stories. And even though they do have those police aspects, I do try to keep their stuff to a minimum. And it was funny. I had also said, they just want to go do a job and then they want to come home to their women. Like, that's what they want to do. To them, it's just a job. They're going in, they're going to do it, and then they're coming home to their girls. That's what they want.
Speaking of their girls, sweet little Claire, is she going to get a happy ending? Does Claire get some sort of redemption or...
So Claire is someone who's just like in the back of my head because I love, one of my biggest inspirations for writing is Melanie Harlow. She is someone I recommend any reader reading. I think she does a fabulous job with so many great small town and stories, but they're all connected in a sense of like it's the same world. And there's little bits and pieces in each story, and then you'll read and you're like, I know them from this book, and they're literally just mentioned in one line. So I love that she's on my list of someone that could be a series, but I don't have a story for her yet.
I see. Yeah, because she was very unlikable from really early on, and then you kind of see snippets of what's actually playing out, and then you start to feel sorry for her a little bit. And so I was curious if you had some, even just like a one-liner of like, in the town today, Claire's getting married.
Claire's getting married. She was someone that I did want to give, because, that's every kind of girl's kind of, sometimes you get those moments. But then we all, at the end of the day, we're girls. I'm a girl's girl. And so I wanted her to have those moments because I think she could be a really great character to dive into in the future.
I mean, you can't blame her for trying to claw and bite and scratch her way to get Graham.
You gotta do what you gotta do at times. And then once you've realized, your worth, you move on.
And then you've already shared so much, but I really want to dive into a little bit more about your journey through authorship, because I feel like you've navigated so many arenas of that. And I feel like that would be really awesome to unpack a little bit about, you mentioned you have your writers group, talking a little bit about that and about Sippin' Stories. But before we segue into that, I wanted to ask first to congratulate you about Feel It All being on the bestseller list. What were you doing when you saw that?
It was Thanksgiving Day, and that was the craziest thing to me. It was Thanksgiving morning. Every Thanksgiving, we go to Cracker Barrel. My family, like my mom and my stepdad and my stepsister and my sister, my grandparents. I don't think my stepbrother wasn't there that time, but we all go and we sit. And I had pulled up my phone just to look, and it had the little first seller banner next to it. And I was like, everybody stop what you're doing right now.
Oh my gosh, that's so sweet. On Thanksgiving at Cracker Barrel with your loved ones.
Yes. And so I had like passed down the phone to everybody, sent it to the little group, and I was like, it was just crazy to me. Yeah, it was pretty surreal. And which I think it is important to point out, like it went bestseller in its category. So
Mhm.
categories can be very niche. And so like Bring It All, I would consider a more successful book based off of like my sales, but it hasn't hit bestseller. Not to say
Mhm.
that it's a bad book, but Feel It All's categories were a little bit more different and niche. So whenever I did hit that bestseller, it was still really cool, and I don't want to take away from that accomplishment. But for those listening, it's not to say that your book isn't a bestseller, I think,
Mhm.
because a
Mhm.
lot of people hold on to that. And, categories have different, not criteria, but like it takes different volumes. Because I
Mhm.
was talking to one of my friends and she's in the top 100 for the sports category. And it's totally incredible because that is such a big category. And the
Mhm.
top 100
Yeah.
is absolutely amazing. And we're
I mean,
Feel It All's.
hockey could have its own within
Yes,
sports.
it needs to have its own. And for her to be in the top 100 is absolutely amazing. And where Feel It All's hit the best one, I think it was just because that category had a bit of a lower threshold. I think that's the word
Mhm.
I'm looking for.
Mhm.
Again, not to take away from my accomplishment, but it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that yours isn't there either. You should
Mhm.
still be accomplished you should still feel pride in those milestones.
Yeah, and I think it's so impressive that like rather than like dipping your toe in the first book, touching on maybe some like lighter topics, like again, I'm not quite sure what Waverly or Wild Stories will entail, but it feels like you really just jumped in head first, not only telling like a more emotional story in general, but a story that you're personally connected to. And I feel like that really just like elevates that joy that this individual who in some ways like, symbolizes you is reaching so many people, and they're telling their friends about it and they're telling their friends about it. And then
Mhm.
that's really awesome. And that's so cool that that happened on Thanksgiving. That's a great story.
It was really cool.
So tell me a little bit about your little writers group, your writer gals. You guys, it sounds like you guys are all in different genres a little bit within romance.
We are. We are. So we have, which I think it's really great. And I think of the term like click gets thrown around so much with
Mm-hmm.
girls. But to me, having these groups have just been almost like just having someone to root you on.
Mm-hmm.
So the group itself, we kind of have things broke down a little bit. We have a group chat that is simply for sprints. So, which is really great. We'll just message, be like, hey, I'm writing tonight. I'm going to write. I'm not leaving my desk or my computer for 20 minutes and I'm going to write words.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll be like, okay, great. We're hopping on. And then we had actually sent a message in that group I did for people to come to my in-laws cabin where we live in Tennessee. And
Mm-hmm.
then those that had come, we had like our separate group because we're a little chaotic. And we were in the original sprints group and they were like, guys, this group chat is getting out of hand.
Oh no.
Because we were planning stuff and they're like, we have FOMO because we can't make it. We're like, I
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm sorry. So it kind of formed it too, but that one kind of, it's so funny how it happened. And that group had come to Tennessee. We spent, I think it was like 4 days together,
Wow.
which was so cool. It's so incredible. It also happened on this year. We have had the worst snow, like the worst snow. My town only gets snow like every 10 years.
Oh wow.
And we never get snow so much so that the like road supervisor didn't order salt for the roads.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of our roads were completely just iced over.
Mm-hmm.
And to get out to the cabin, it was like just straight ice the whole way there.
Didn't you guys have like a 15-day like shutdown or something? I think I saw like people weren't able to go into work and like if you had to drive to work at least.
My work also, we shut down for the whole week.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Wow,
we
that's
maybe
crazy.
went 2 days at most, and I had to call my father-in-law because we couldn't get out of our driveway.
Oh my gosh.
And he'd have to come pick us up because he has a big work farmer's truck.
Mm-hmm.
And so he would come get us.
Wow. Well, that's kind of fun. Like we're kind of snowed in on our writer's retreat.
It was kind of fun, but we were like taking creative walks in the snow. We come pick us up and we're like, okay, we're over this.
What other kinds of things did you do on the retreat? Do you guys just like literally sit and just like write in silence next to each other, or what does that look like?
We tried to do that. That would maybe last 10 minutes before someone spoke, and then we would just start talking.
Mm-hmm.
We spent one day in Chattanooga, and a couple of us got tattoos, which was really fun. I love tattoos. I love getting them. And so obviously was like, let's all go get tattoos. So a couple of us went and got tattoos. A couple of us wrote at a local coffee shop, which was really fun. Yeah, we did that for the day. Otherwise, we just kind of chilled at the cabin.
Mm-hmm.
And we would make dinners. We would sometimes we would write. We would float ideas off of each other, hang out.
And these are writers not just from Tennessee.
Yeah, not just from Tennessee. So we had a few from Florida. We had one come in from Canada, Michigan, California. Yes. And
you all met through the like Bookstagram community, or?
We did. We met through the Bookstagram community. So I had reached out to Danny, in which Danny is my best friend in the whole wide world. I love her so much. And she had invited me to the sprinting group. And what was so cool about that group is that we all just sort of added people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's collectively grown, and it's just kind of added people for the sprints. And then the one for the writer's retreat was, those that could make it. But we want to do another writer's retreat for sure and have more people come. We had talked about doing something a little bit. I think we talked about Florida last time because I think 4 of them actually live in Florida, and which of course we were all snowed in. So they were like, we want to go somewhere warm. Like, I get it.
What would you say is like one of the greatest things that's come out of having a writer's group like that?
I would definitely say the friendships, because it's having someone that is going through something with you is just so cathartic. But it was even so. I would have to say I'm very close to Danny, and I'm very close to Sarah, and it was which I'm close to all of these girls, and they're all wonderful, wonderful girls. But I hadn't called them. It'll just be the craziest things, and then my assistant Kristen. They have formed their ways into my heart. And I was talking to them the other day, and I was like, I had wrote the Bennett sisters for my sister and my mom. But I said, we're sitting here talking, and I feel like I'm forming my own Bennett sisters with you guys. And it's been so incredible just to have those girl friendships where there's no competition. There's just love and support and rooting each other on, recognizing each other's accomplishments. And that's just so nice, because I feel like a lot of, as women, we can be a tad catty. And so finding just a tad. So finding those women is just so incredible.
Yeah, that's so sweet. Well, hey, if you don't have anything in the works after this series, that seems like something a lot of people would be interested in reading. A girl gang of romance writers. How cute would that be? I'll stop tempting you. Tell me about you and Danny. Tell me about Sippin' Stories. How did that get started?
So me and Danny are quite possibly the 2 most chaotic people just ever. And so I had messaged her our friendship, this is how crazy our friendship anniversary is June 30th. And that was the day I messaged her and I was talking to her, asking her some questions and stuff like that. And she was like, girl, I don't know. I'm like, well, I don't know either. And then we just kind of sort of started talking a little bit, just floating ideas off each other. And I was like, I really want to do a live, but I don't want to do one by myself. And she was like, well, I'll do it with you. I'm like, great, let's do it. I'm going to need some alcohol to do this. And she was like, I'm also going to need alcohol. And I was like, okay, great. I'm going to get a bottle of wine. She was like, yeah, I'm going to get a bottle of wine too. We drank the whole bottle. We were on live for 2 hours. Each of us had drank our whole bottle. We were on live for, I'm pretty sure it was over 2 hours. She was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm drunk. And I was like, she was like, we need to get off.
Like, wait, so what are we supposed to be talking about again?
So we got off, which it was still such a great live. But then immediately after we got off the live, we FaceTimed each other. And she was like, what if we invited other authors to do this with us? And I was like, of course, naturally.
To black out on Instagram Live with us.
Brilliant plan. I love it. I think this is a great idea. And then it just came. And so we do it once a month. We've had so many incredible authors. We've had Katie Michelle, Daisy Thorne, Kat Summers, Bianca Miller, Maria Ragu. And so we invite them on. We do have a sign-up form, and we're actually booked out for the rest of the year.
Wow, congratulations.
We're very excited. We're thinking of doubling up a couple of months because we had some requests and we want to try to work everyone in. But of course, life hit us. So we haven't fully got that planned out yet. But essentially, we get on the live, we drink whatever you choose, per se. We've done wine 3 times. We've done Angry Orchards, which has started. That's where my love started. I was like, I've never tried them, so I'll drink them. And she was like, they're great.
Oh, wow.
Like, I love them. So I think we're doing, in this April, we're doing Carly Brenna. She wrote Spur of the Moment, and I'm very excited. So this is for April. I'm not sure when we're airing this. So this might have already passed.
Yeah, it likely will be like end of April. So possibly it will coincide.
We're doing Carly. I'm very excited to have her on. She wrote Spur of the Moment. Her other book, Beat Around the Bush just came out. And she's wonderful as well.
That's awesome. That's kind of similar to ABF's origin story.
Yes.
I literally, Sierra and I really just can't write at all, but I have so many ideas. My brain is just constantly thinking. And so one of my favorite things to do is when Sierra gets stuck on like a plot line or something, and to just sit and just like tell her all of the chaotic thoughts that I'm thinking, and then watch her turn them into something that's like coherent and makes sense. And oftentimes there's alcohol involved in that.
It's the best.
Big fans of the red wine. And so we had been out before. I went to dinner with her and her husband once, and we would drink and talk about books, or we'd just sit in her living room and do it. And he was just like sits there and listens, and is like, you guys are so entertaining. Like this is, and which is honestly like, it's kind of it's such a good compliment that like whatever our random like thoughts are, somebody else is interested in like listening to them. And you always wonder like, I wonder if me and my girlfriends like had our own show. People would think we were so funny, And so to hear someone actually be like, I'm entertained by what you're saying, that's kind of how it came to be. Yeah. And also I'm just like, because I can't really write, I'm so interested in how other people take those chaotic ideas and put them down, and reading books like how did you even think about that? Like, where did you even get the story from? And I'm just like perpetually curious. And so it kind of was like those two things coming together. And it was like, well, maybe if I, have these fun conversations with Sierra, I can do them with other authors who write some of my favorite books. And then I can just, have a good time. And it was also my idea where I'm like, I don't want to sit sober and just ask questions. So it's like, maybe if I say we do a toast and I tell people, it doesn't have to be alcoholic. You could bring a soda if you want or whatever. That will help ease into it. And so that's funny. It feels like it's just like girlfriends that sit around and you're like, do you think other people want to listen to us?
Yes, they do. Which it's funny you said that too, because we start whenever I send a voice memo to Kristen, Danny, and Sarah. Each time we do it, we say on today's podcast.
That's so cute.
On today's podcast, and then we refresh everything. They could never air.
Yeah, those are fun to listen back to, though.
They are very fun to listen back to, but I think it's so fun doing the Sippin' Stories, especially. And I think one of the things that had really made me want to do this was you had described it as like a fun girls FaceTime.
Mm-hmm.
That's how me and Danny always tell the authors that we talk to. We're like, it's essentially just a fun FaceTime, but people are watching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's why, well, a little like behind the scenes things. That's why I tell people like, just talk unfiltered. And if you decide later, like, oh, I drank too much of my Angry Orchard and I said a spoiler, can you edit that out? Like, we'll do our very best to do that, but it works best when you're just like here to have a good conversation, which is why I try not to provide any like too structured of questions.
Yeah.
I honestly haven't even revisited those. I'm like, I wonder if those questions I send, if I even end up asking them, because the whole goal is that like we could do this, right? Just riff. And if we don't even end up talking about, your writing journey or a specific book, and like we just kind of go off on a tangent on things, then I feel like I did what I wanted to do, and I feel like it was a good time for the guest, and that's a win for me.
I agree 100%.
And speaking of really important questions, the last question that I have for you, blonde or brunette? Which one have you enjoyed the most? I feel like I was stalking your Instagram, was like, she used to have really dark hair, and now you're like cute little fun-loving blonde. So I'm just wondering.
So funny. Okay. So full disclosure, my sister is a hairstylist.
Oh, so you've got all the changes at your disposal.
10 out of 10 recommend. And I'm naturally a brunette, but I change my hair color every 2 years.
Oh, wow.
I've had brown hair, black hair, blonde hair, red hair. Had pink hair for a little bit.
Like totally pink or like the streaks of pink?
It was blonde and it went down into bubblegum pink.
Oh my gosh, fun. Where are those pictures? Do I have to get admitted to the group chat to see those?
No, I'll send them to you. But she's only been a hairstylist for a couple of years, but it really makes it easy access now. But like essentially every 2 years, I'm like, I'm tired of this color and I'll just redo my hair completely. For forever, I was like, I'm not going back blonde. I'm not going to do it. I was like, okay, I miss my blonde.
It's so cute. I feel like when you post pictures with your like book aesthetic, it just feels like with your light hair, and it just feels so like springy, summery, cutesy.
It is. And I do really love it. And I would love to say that I'm going to stay blonde. I'll probably stay blonde for 2 years, which when I had told my sister, because right before this, if you scroll through my Instagram, like you said, you see I have black hair. My hair is essentially black. And I had texted her and I said, I want to go back blonde. How much will you kill me if we do that? And she was like, I think I'm going to kill you, like just through this text message. I don't know what else to say. And I was like, but I really think you can do it. And she was like, well, I know I can do it. I don't want to.
Yeah, I didn't realize like what a big ask that is. There was like several years ago, I went more blonde in college, and then I was like, oh, it's fall time, I want to go darker and whatever. And so then I did that, and then I went back, once like May rolls around, I'm like, I want to go back to like blonde, and they're like, well, we can't do that in one session, it will fry all your hair off, like we're now going to have to progressively move back to blonde. And I was like, oh, this is way more work than I thought it was going to be.
I was really impressed. She did my blonde, which I did just get it touched up, but she did my blonde essentially in 3 goes.
Wow. From black?
But she is wonderful. She is very, very good at what she does. And I've also just been blessed to have hair that takes color really well. And so even when she does it, she's like, your hair just takes this color. I'm like, I know. It's thin, but it does what it's supposed to do. But she really does a great job. And I had like very minimal damage. So she does a wonderful, wonderful job.
That's
She's
awesome.
so talented.
To hear that, sis, that one's for you.
She's going to text me and be like, why are you talking about me? And when you read Bring It All.
Please stop changing your hair color.
Yeah, please. When you read Bring It All, you'll be like, this makes sense.
Oh, yeah, because she's more Waverly.
Yes, she is definitely more Waverly.
She's sassy.
She's sassy. She's sassy. She
I'm
knows
excited
it.
to meet her.
Which I will preface with Bring It All. I know you said you like to go in blind.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I also think Feel It All is very emotional, I've been told that Bring It All is way more emotional. Just
really?
Way more emotional.
Wow.
So I do recommend reading the trigger list for sure. For Bring It All.
I feel like I'm kind of one of those people that's like, I don't want to know when the drop is coming or what the drop looks like. I'd rather just be there doing it. And I love when I'm really surprised at the direction a book takes, particularly these books with like these cutesy covers. And then you read them and then you're like, wow, that kind of hurt. I was not expecting that. There's flowers all over the cover of this book. And then, you know, the next thing I know that I'm like crying in my room and I'm like, oh my gosh, you got me. That was really good. I feel like I kind of like the surprise of that a little bit, but I will heed your warning.
Which you can, if you're not easily triggered, I think you would be fine. It does have very sensitive topics that I would, if you do have a couple of triggers, just glance at them. You don't have to, go into the whole thing. It doesn't, give anything super away, but it does give the topics that are discussed and the chapters they are mentioned in. But it was funny. I had a girl, it was an ARC reader, and she had messaged me and she was like, girl, I signed up for this because she said, I thought it was going to be a small town. She's like, I read dark romance and I was picking this up and thought I'm going to go into something light, fluffy, and fun. And she was like, why am I crying?
Coming from a dark romance reader?
Yeah. I was like, what an honor. She was like, different. She was like, she's like, I expect those things in dark romance. I expect, which obviously it's not dark in the sense of dark romance, but she was like, I'm sitting here crying. This is not, she said the same thing. She's like, you have flowers on your cover. She said, your cover is pink.
A pink cover with flowers? That's very unsuspecting.
So sorry. If it helps, I don't think book 3 is going to be as emotionally damaging.
What part of it are you in now? Are you still writing? Are you almost done?
I'm still writing, but it's plotted.
Okay.
It's plotted out. It's not going to be as emotionally damaging as Bring It All. I don't think. I don't know.
But didn't you say you also thought you didn't think that Bring It All was, and then till people started telling you?
I thought it was, just not as... I wasn't expecting them to be like, it's way more emotionally damaging than book 1.
I see. Well, I don't know if I have a clear, what would you say the biggest difference between Waverly and Wyla is?
I think going in, Wyla's been a little bit of a hard character for me to dive into, I think, because essentially she's someone who didn't really have it figured out. And then now all of a sudden she has to have it figured out. And this is me trying not to spoil anything.
You've been doing so good so far.
Waverly was someone who she's always been sure of herself and confident in her own skin and knows what she wants to do. And she has this just beauty that matches that confidence. And her character was so fun because I knew that. And I think in Wyla's book, she kind of is figuring it out. And she's just trying to do the best she can. I'm trying to be very careful with my words here. She is just surviving.
But it's not going to be that deep. It's not as emotional as the other two. So Mollie claims.
No. And this is Kristen's going to message me when she listens to this. You're like, you are struggling. And which I had told her, because she had messaged me, she said, you need to make sure that you are not doing spoilers. And I said, Kristen, when this airs, some of because we are going to make big announcements on book 3 in the next couple of weeks. I said, when this airs, those announcements should be on my Instagram. So why can't I say some of them? And she was like, Dave, not.
Oh, no. We should have had a meeting with me and Kristen, and we could have decided, like, we literally won't release it just in case Mollie says anything until you give us a go-ahead.
Which I'd even today, which people will be listening back to this today, I had posted a teaser on my story. And I had tagged her and I said, Kristen, if you're seeing this, no, you don't. And she was like, why do you keep doing this?
Oh, Kristen.
She's incredible. She's amazing. I love her so much. But yeah, so Wila's been, back to our point.
Our very carefully planned out point.
Do feel like I can say, Jet's someone who comes in and wants to, it's very much I can do it myself. If I can't do it myself, I'm going to figure it out. And Jet's but like, let me help you. Like, let me, I'm not saying that you can't, but let me help you. Let me do some of these things for you. I think that was kind of hard for me to get a hold of, I think. Also because I can be that way. And my mom especially is very much that way.
Yeah.
And so almost in a sense, I think when I was writing Waverly with the idea of my sister in mind, she has so many qualities that I admire and love. And, essentially, I think my sister is just one of the best people just in this entire world. And so it was fun to write someone who I felt like resembled her personality, because I feel like it highlights just what an incredible person she truly is. So going back to Winry and Wila, where it kind of has those aspects that are both me and my mom, are kind of like...
That's funny. Yeah, I feel like to write something that you struggle with yourself, you're like, I don't want help, and Wila doesn't want Jet's help. We're good.
He doesn't. But yeah, so that's been a bit of a struggle of mine, knowing those things. And I think that has a lot to do with it.
I wish you luck in keeping it emotionally mellow, although, we'll keep that open just in case you change your mind.
Just in case. I don't foresee, I will say, and I don't think that this is a spoiler per se.
Kristen just fainted.
She did. She's going to message me when this happens, but I am a big fan of third act breakups. 100%. I love them.
I knew it was coming, Mollie. I knew it. I'm about to hit that, aren't I? I knew it was coming.
Look, I'm sorry. Okay,
I told you I could feel it.
At the bottle of my can, so of my Angry Orchard. So that's anything. I am a big fan of third act breakups. I love the drama. I live for the drama. I live for the angst. I don't foresee a third act breakup for Wila's book.
Okay. I see what you mean now when you say less emotional. Gotcha.
I do. People have told me that my third act breakups don't necessarily bother them for their reasoning. So I guess take that as you will, because I've had a lot of people message me and they're like, well, I don't read third act breakups. And I'm like, that's another topic. That's totally fair. You do not have to read my book. If that's not something you enjoy, please don't. You don't have to. I want you to read something that you enjoy. But I have had several people tell me, they're like, that didn't bother me that much. They were like, I mean, it emotionally destroyed me, but
yeah,
it wasn't, they're quick, if that helps.
Yeah, I personally am a huge fan of making your characters work very hard for their happy ending. I think makes it more rewarding for me. I love angst. I'm a Cancer, and so I love to cry, love to have my heart broken, love the gut punch. I live for it. My only qualm about the third act breakup is I feel like sometimes it's not believable. Like you wanted to add the angst, and now I just don't necessarily believe that they would break up at this point. Or you did such a good job convincing me that they should break up that it's hard for me to see why they should get back together.
Why are they back together?
Yeah, I think that's maybe what some of the people who don't like reading those, that some of their issue is that it's like, okay, they broke up, I want them to stay broken up. Or like, that was dumb and now I'm annoyed with them because they just used some weak reason to break up, and now it's like I feel lukewarm about it. So I think when you could do it really well, it definitely heightens the whole, after half. But
yeah, some people might not agree that I've done them well, and that's perfectly fine.
Mhm.
Everyone is entitled to their own opinions about my books. That's, being a part of being an author is those reviews. So that's perfectly fine. It is funny because whenever my husband and I first got together, we are high school sweethearts. We have been together since my sophomore year of high school. And we
Aw.
had talked when we had got together, we both agreed that if we broke up, we were not getting back together.
Mhm.
We were not going to do that. We weren't going to do the back and forth. We were not going to do anything. And which this is just us personally.
Mhm.
We just weren't going to do those things. We had set boundaries. We had talked about it out. And so we've never broken up.
Mhm.
But when I've talked to him about my love for third act breakups, he's like, what are you trying to say? Like, I'm not trying to say anything.
Our marriage would be so much more fun if we just like broke up for a second, don't you think?
Like, why do you keep doing this? And I'm like, but it's the drama.
It's the love of the game, my guy. I can't explain it to you.
He's like, okay, whatever you do, that's fine.
Oh my gosh, that's so. Does he read your books?
He hasn't read them. He's a very big audio guy. So he tells me all the time, he's like, if they were on audio, I would listen to them right away.
You don't lay in bed and read them to him?
No. He'll even though to say he hasn't read them, he is also 100% my biggest supporter. He will tell everyone that we meet that I've wrote a book and that they need to go read them.
Oh,
he had
that's
told
so sweet.
he right now works for Heating and Air, and he said, an 80-year-old woman's house and convinced her to read my books. For preference, my books are recommended for 18 and older, which she is, but they are smutty. And she read both of them and called him to tell him how much she enjoyed them.
Oh, Grandma, how progressive of her. She's like, I wish they had these kind of books when I was young.
Because I had told her, I said, when he came home and he had told me that happened, I said, Christian, did you think that they are smutty? And he was like, oh, I told her. She told me she was old enough to read them.
I'm an adult. Leave the damn books.
He said, essentially that's what she said.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
And she called him on his cell phone and was like, I loved them. They were so...
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. She's like, how do I pre-order on Amazon? I want the third one.
I want the third one. So he'll come by. My desk is obviously where I'm at right now. And then his desk is right next to mine.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a big gamer. And so we have our setups right next to each other. So it's always real fun. And he'll kind of walk by and I'm like, don't read it yet. It's not done.
Don't look over my shoulder.
Don't look over my shoulder.
You guys have the perfect gamer husband, reader wife setup, like right next to each other.
Well, you sometimes say that. I've been lately wanting to get a TikTok of us where I'm like sitting writing and he's over there on the side and he's yelling at his teammates. For what reason? I don't know. But then it is funny because we are right next to each other. So it goes back and forth. So sometimes I'll call Danny and Kristen and Sarah, and naturally we have just the most offhand, just inappropriate phone call because we do. Kristen's not a writer, but she is a reader, so she will read smut. Me and Sarah are both contemporary romance authors who write smutty, and then Danny is a fantasy author who does have smutty aspects. So we'll talk about those things.
Mm-hmm.
And his friends can hear us
Oh, no.
on the thing. And they'll be like, what are they talking about? We just have to, Christian will just be like, they're romance authors. Just, it's fine. It doesn't even bother me. You'll just have to like tune it out. I'm like, okay.
That's sweet. I feel like my fiance would kill me if I was talking about that stuff in the background. You're like, stop. People are going to think you're talking about us.
He has just gotten to the point, like I said, where I can't keep a secret. I can't keep a secret anywhere. And so he's just used to me just blurting things out. And he's like,
there she goes again. Gave the kids their Christmas presents a week early.
Oh, he's bad about that too. But I'll just say whatever comes to my mind. Which in general, me, my mom, and my sister are very close. And so since it's always just been the three of us for the longest of time, we are very comfortable talking about our bodies and stuff like that. And so he's gotten used to it over the years of us doing that. And I think it's really funny. I had gotten, which some authors read review and some don't. And every now and then I'll get an itch to really self-deprecate and read my reviews.
Oh, Molly.
Which sometimes they can be very helpful and very useful. But it was funny. One was it was a good bad review. It wasn't like, she was like, I enjoyed it, but there were some things, and she had listed them out. And I do think that bad reviews can be helpful. But then it was really funny because she was like, I didn't totally believe some of the things that the sisters would do.
You're like, oh, honey.
Almost everything that the sisters do is something that me, my mom, and my sister do or have done.
You're like, hi, I'm Mollie Goins. I've done that. Nice to meet you.
I've done that. This actually did happen.
I'm sorry to break it to you, but that's all real. I did that last week.
That's actually, what is that? Is it cap or not cap when it's true?
No cap is true.
No cap. Yeah. That's actually...
No cap, ma'am.
That's no cap, actually. So...
Well, I appreciate your willingness to say whatever is on your mind. That's what has made you such a wonderful podcast host or podcast guest and host on Sip and Stories. I really appreciate you being vulnerable with me today and doing your best not to give spoilers, but also giving me, all the background on your characters. Yeah. She was good, Kristen. Don't be mad. You trained her well. She did a good job. She didn't spill the beans.
We won't let her listen to this until it airs.
Yeah, maybe that's the safe option. She won't know. And then you'll have to just say sorry. It is what it is.
It's already done.
But for those listening, as Molly said, you can get Feel It All and Bring It All on Kindle Unlimited. And I think signed copies are coming soon on the website. Is that right?
Yes. So signed copies are coming soon on the website. I will also be doing a pre-order for PR boxes for Bring It All. And then we will have signed orders available through Haley Dickert is doing a big indie author, almost online bookstore. And I will have signed copies available on her website as well.
Awesome. And Despite It All comes out later this summer, so you can follow Molly on socials to get updates about that. Is your TikTok handle the same as your Instagram one?
So it is a little different. Their Instagram is author_Mollie Goins, and then TikTok is author.mollie.goins.
Cool.
They were taken. I made one, and then the other one was taken, and I'm like, okay, cool.
And make sure to follow Molly on Instagram, because that's where you will see Sip and Stories once a month on Instagram Live.
Yes.
All right, Molly. Well, thank you so much. I also am now at the end of my can, so it's probably best we turn it off before we give Kristen a heart attack.
I know. Not to say, but I did pull out a second for later.
Okay, then we should really wrap it up.
We should really wrap it up.
Well, thanks, Molly. It was so nice chatting with you. I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me.